Okay, an update here on the Tamiya Madcap project. So I actually don't quite recall where I was when I left off on this with the last video, but I think it was mostly like the rear gearbox was done and I was fiddling around with how to do a wing mount. So let's go over a few things. This might repeat a few stuff that I did from last time, but as far as the wing mount goes, excuse me, I have a little bit of a cold here. For the astute rear tower, the spacing between the left and right mounting points for the wing mount is different than what it is for the Madcap. So if we go back over here to the, this is a bit of a mess here. Where did it go? The parts pile for the rear tower, front tower, rear tower. This right here. Okay, and the actual wing mount for this. Where is it? See, all my stuff is such a mess. Oh, here it is. Okay, this guy right here. We'll take this. So this is the wing mount for the Madcap. And the spacing here is different than what it is, as you see here, on the astute rear tower. So when you upgrade to this rear tower, you're going to need a different wing mount arrangement. You could either do this plastic piece here, which comes from the manta ray or dirt thrasher that actually is a perfect fit here. Or you can do something like, say, a Dynastorm type of wing mount with the two aluminum pieces and the metal wire that goes around. But that Dynastorm wing mount is exceedingly difficult to find, as it is for the Astute and Super Astute. Even the re-release models, there's practically no parts available anymore. But the manta ray wing mount should work. The only issue here is that with the manta ray wing mount, as you can see, the actual mounting point is further forward. So, you could either compensate for that by cutting the holes differently on your wing, so it pushes the wing back, or you could just accept the fact that the wing is going to get pushed forward. And on modern tracks, that's probably okay because, we run much higher grip dirt or even AstroTurf than what we ran years ago. And so you're going to want to bias your weight and even your center of pressure further forward. So I'm actually kind of okay with this, using this different kind of wing mount here that pushes the wing forward. So that's number one. Number two, I have the shocks installed. These are original Tamiya high cap dampers. I think must have been from some Egress or Avanti 2001 that I picked up years ago. I don't have any specific tuning that I've done to them. I have a bunch of this Tamiya soft damper oil, so I just threw that into the shocks. For the rear, it's actually maybe okay. I think I have, what pistons do I have in this? I might have maybe like 2-hole pistons here, and I think 3-hole pistons in the back, and I think I put 2-hole pistons in the front. So with this soft oil and these springs, which are soft springs, it actually feels okay in the back. Now, maybe when this is all loaded up with electronics, it'll be a bit too soft, but we'll see. And then same thing for the front. I put 2-hole pistons up front to try to stiffen it up a little bit, but with this soft oil and these soft springs, it's probably going to be, at the very least, under-damped. So, over time, I may thicken that up. But for now, it's what I have just as a placeholder. What else did I do? Well, for the steering rack, this steering rack here is an aluminum steering rack for the Super Astute. It does fit onto the Madcap without any extra modification. You just have to use a different type of screw. This is a shoulder screw. And you have, I think these are 4x8 bearings that go into the housings here for the left and right bell crank. So the shoulder screw just slots right through, and then you screw into the plastic post that's on the chassis. Hopefully those posts won't crack because they're part of the chassis. If they crack, you need a new chassis. You've got to use epoxy or something to fix that. Now the actual, let's say, geometry of this in terms of how the ball studs end up being placed might be a little different from the stock steering rack, but the stock steering rack for this thing is so flimsy, such a piece of shit, that I don't want to use this because the plastic is smaller, that can break. The ball studs that go on this are smaller, which means the ball cups are smaller. Those can pop off. as we just saw here, I think. Oh, and then this little drag link here is just this flimsy little piece that you see on a lot of stuff, like even the Yokomo 870C, for example. So I wanted something a little beefier, so I went with these aluminum parts, just put a titanium turnbuckle in there, and then all these ball studs I'm using are from 3 Racing. They make metric threaded ball studs with 4.3 millimeter or 4.8 millimeter ball diameter. The 4.3 millimeter diameter is what you would use for Team Associated cars, and I have RPM ball cups here for Team Associated ball studs. I like to use these yellow ball cups on certain builds, so I'm using the 4.3 millimeter 3 Racing aluminum ball studs on this, at least in as many places as I can, for that part of the build. Okay, fine. A couple more things at the front, but before I get to that, on the rear, is there something I wanted to mention here? Oh yeah, so when mounting the rear camber link, you don't really have any tuning options for camber gain or roll center, because this shock tower mount just has one hole to mount the inside of the camber link, and the hub carrier has one hole here, as you can see. The only way you can tune this is to use a different hole on the bottom of the hub carrier, but that's also going to change your track width, because the stock position is actually to put the hinge pin through the lowermost innermost hole. So if I want to, say, drop this hub carrier down to drop the roll center, say I'm on a lower grip track, I'd actually have to move this in and then down. If I move it in, then this dog bone is going to push in against the inside of this diff out drive. This CVA, I guess you could call it, is also, I think, is an extra speed part for the Super Astute, and the length of this is such that I can only use this lower inner hole for the rear hub carrier. So I don't have any geometry tuning options in the back here. It's just, that's kind of fixed. Okay, fine. Except for, of course, the shock angle and the shock setup. Now, going to the front, what did I do here? I have the aluminum front bulkhead. This is also for the Astute or Super Astute. I think this is made by... Is this made by Extra Speed? It might be. I did have to modify it so that it would fit around these posts here. These 2 plastic posts are part of the chassis, and there's a brace, a front brace that has to mount to these posts. So I can't cut these posts out to make room for the this bulkhead / kick-up plate. I actually have to take the bulkhead here and cut around it. So I had to get a Dremel and a cutting wheel, and you can see it's a bit of a hack job, but it works. I just made space for this back plate here to fit around these 2 plastic posts. Once you do that, all the holes line up perfectly fine. So this actually mounts perfectly fine. But as far as mounting the front shock tower to this bulkhead goes, the way that, let's see, I'm trying to remember how this went. I have this screw here. I think there's some kind of a spacer here between the shock tower and the bulkhead, and that gives me a little bit of play, forward to backward here. And I figured, I can't quite remember why that's there, but in any case, I wanted to put some O-rings in the back here between the shock tower and this lock nut here that's locking everything down. So that way, if I have some kind of a crash or something, there's a little bit of give here, a little bit of flex into the O-ring, just to keep stuff from breaking. Because this bulkhead is, being aluminum, is very hard. If anything's going to break, it's probably going to be the shock tower. So there's that. There's front arms. I'm using just the stock Madcap front arms. And of course the stock Madcap rear arms. I don't have any aftermarket arms on this at all. The only issue I'm facing right now is what to do about the front bumper. Because this bulkhead is for the Astute or the Super Astute, the Madcap front bumper doesn't fit. Even though these 2 front holes here are the correct spacing left to right compared to these 2 front holes, this guy here gets in the way because there's no third hole here for that third sort of stub, if you will, on the Madcap bumper. Now you could try to cut this out so that, you know, only these two holes mount onto the bulkhead. But if you try to line that up so that these two holes are actually, you know, into this bulkhead, the bumper itself ends up riding up against the front arms. So really, I cannot use this with the Astute front bulkhead. So what I have to do actually is find an Astute or Super Astute front bumper to mount onto this. And as with all the other Astute parts, they are out of production right now, unless, you know, at some point Tamiya decides to re-release the Super Astute. But I can get a 3D printed version of it on Shapeways, so I'm probably going to end up doing that, to use a 3D printed front bumper. And then the other thing is with the front caster blocks. These caster blocks are right here. And I think this one in particular has a little crack on it, if I'm not mistaken, on the top hole here that the hinge pin goes through. You can see that the part itself is actually has like a left half and a right half. So you can imagine it cracking down the middle here. And it looks like, I could be wrong, but it looks like there's maybe a crack there. And I don't want to take any chances if I'm on the track with this thing. So I got to find new caster blocks. Now, Madcap caster blocks are hard to find. And because it's Tamiya ABS plastic, they're not particularly reliable. So I think for the money, my best bet is to probably just get an aftermarket aluminum Astute or Super Astute front caster block. Might change the geometry a little bit, but at least I'll have a part that's you know, sturdier, and I won't have to worry about it cracking. So I got to get 3D printed front bumper, new aluminum caster blocks, and then I can finish up with the front assembly, and then I can mount the electronics, and then we're kind of, you know, ready to go. So this is where I am on the Madcap. Whether or not, as I'm building this, I sort of realized that, you know, whether or not I want to race this thing at the Vintage Off-Road Nationals, I'm not completely sure, because what I'm finding is just in holding this, it's very heavy at the rear compared to the front, which, you know, you have in rear motor buggies. But some rear motor buggies are worse than others in terms of the front to rear weight distribution. And I'm a little worried that this one might be particularly heavy at the rear. Maybe it'll run okay, but I do suspect that my Tamiya VQS will probably be significantly quicker than this on the track. So after all the trouble I'm going through to, you know, build this up as a nice project, it's entirely possible that I take it to Vonats, and then during open practice, I run a couple of laps and realize it's kind of crap, and then I just put it aside and run either my VQS or my Dirt Thrasher. So, but of course, you don't know until you try, and this should be a fun little car to try at the very least. So, almost done, and yeah, that's it for now. Thanks for watching.